I am going to start today's Sustainability Essentials webinar now. I am Susan Ingalls. I am delighted to welcome all of you to today's conversation, especially our panelists for our discussion today of urban salvage, wood that comes out of urban areas. Our panelists today, whose faces you see on your screen probably, include Jennifer Alger of Far West Forest Products, Paul Hickman of Urban Ashes, Theo Hooker of Cambium Carbon, and Sarah Hines of the U.S. Forest Service, all of whom are also of the Urbanwood Network. So we'll be hearing from them later. And we want to hear from all of you. So even though I have you on mute, please send in your questions and your comments via the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will get to them. So to start, before we hear all about the Urbanwood Network, I want to be sure you all know something about Sustainable Furnishings Council. We are in our 15th year now, having been formed in October of 2006 as a coalition of companies involved in the residential furnishings industry in various ways. So suppliers of materials like wood, manufacturers of all kinds of furnishings products, stores where these things are sold, design firms that do the specifying, and importantly, environmental organizations like World Wildlife Fund and Rainforest Alliance have been part of our work from the beginning and remain active with us today. We have 400 member companies now, each of which has made their own public and verifiable commitment to sustainability, to transparency, and to continuous improvement. And we help companies realize their own commitment to sustainability. So we provide a lot of information and guidance and resources, and we provide networking opportunities and marketing support. All our members can use the member seal in all their marketing and advertising. But our work does go beyond our membership. Some years ago, we formed the Sustainable Furnishings Education Fund, which we use to educate the industry at large and the general public. We are an educational organization more than anything else, and we have a certificate program. So if you're interested in the kinds of things we're talking about today, you might consider getting involved with us as a member or as an attender at our Green Leaders course. 6 hours, 6 CEUs, useful in lots of ways. So I hope you will be interested in what we're talking about, and I hope you'll continue to engage with us. As you all know, sustainability is an umbrella term, and it's a broad umbrella. There are lots of things that fall under this wide umbrella, many issues, and healthy forests are an important way of addressing most of these issues, if not all of them. Resource conservation, mitigating climate change, filtering out pollutants, especially from our water, but also from our air, preserving biodiversity, so addressing the extinction crisis, etc. And importantly, healthy forests have a lot to do with healthy communities in their local economies and in the quality of life of people in our local communities. So these are things to keep in mind as we talk today about urban woods. We at Sustainable Furnishings Council worry about the range of sustainability issues, and we are mindful that our industry has responsibility across the board, really, with all these interrelated issues. We burn a lot of fossil fuels, and so are responsible for a lot of CO2 emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions. Being a global manufacturing industry, we are running lots of factories which are run on electricity, and we are transporting raw materials and finished goods all over the world, burning even more fossil fuels. Many of those goods, many of those materials are wood. And we in our industry add the highest value to the wood resource. So not only do we use a lot of wood, but we add a lot of value to wood. So we have a huge responsibility to halt deforestation, to do our part to halt deforestation. When we lose forests, when we burn fossil fuels, we are polluting our atmosphere. When we use finishes and adhesives that have large quantities of volatile organic compounds, we are polluting our indoor air. And we do, in our industry, put a finish on just about everything. So that toxin, as well as others, that class of toxins as well as others, are ones that we have to take responsibility for trying to mitigate. VOCs like formaldehyde, flame retardant chemicals, PFAS, the highly fluorinated stain treatments we are so fond of in our performance fabrics, antimicrobials, vinyl. These are all things that we use a lot of in our industry and can take responsibility for using less of. There are also other harmful chemicals that make their way into waterways as a result of processes that we are using to make textiles and leather, for instance. So those two sorts of products in particular, we need to be mindful of the harmful chemicals that are used in production. And we need to be mindful of what this has to do with communities. Sometimes there are people forced into labor they don't want to do. Sometimes there are people who are taken advantage of because a resource like a forest is a desirable resource by someone other than the indigenous community, for instance. So social equity is related to all of these things as well. And finally, in furniture, believe it or not, though it's a durable good, we throw away a lot of furniture, such that these days 6% of US landfill waste is furnishings. And in at least one community I know of on the eastern shore of Maryland, 65% of their landfill waste is wood. So today's topic of keeping wood out of our landfills is particularly important. We do work on our concerns about all these issues with initiatives like the What's It Made Of initiative, which is to encourage transparency in supply chains. And with our partners at the National Wildlife Federation, part of What's It Made Of is our wood furniture scorecard, which we are working on now. We're doing assessments for the 4th edition, which is going to be published in October. The Wood Furniture Scorecard is a look at an assessment of retailers, a look at whether they are using a policy to guide their decisions in choosing wood furniture or wood material that they use to make furniture. Are they using a policy? Is it a robust one? Are they implementing it effectively? Are they doing anything else? We look at all of these things in these 3 areas, whether there's a policy in it, whether it's a good one, how they are implementing it, and what else they are doing out of their commitment to sustainability. And I want to point out that our methodology includes an emphasis on using recycled and reclaimed wood. So first, if the policy includes a commitment to recycled and reclaimed, that's something that you get points for. Our goal is to save natural forest ecosystems. And if we are using wood that came out of a forest long ago, we are mitigating threat to forests that are growing now. In the practices and performances area, we give points for the percentage of wood furniture that is recycled, reclaimed, or certified under any certification, or from acceptable plantation wood. And in this scorecard, we are emphasizing Forest Stewardship Council certification and recycled, reclaimed, because we feel like those are the best ways to mitigate deforestation. Notice here that stores do get points for visibly offering recycled, reclaimed wood furniture. So when I go on as a shopper and look for dining room furniture made of recycled wood or reclaimed wood, I want to be able to find that. If I'm interested in specifically making sure that the wood products I choose do not come from growing forests, then I could look simply for the term reclaimed. So we do give credit for that. And I want to be sure to point out that when we are talking about reclaimed and recycled wood, that includes pre or post-consumer recycled content. You might know that there is MDF made from dust of ground up broken furniture. So that would count in our reckoning. Also, of course, wood reclaimed from old buildings or other structures, and wood salvaged from street trees or from river bottoms or from places like that. We do ask that the company we are scoring tell us why they're making this reclaimed claim, why they are saying it is reclaimed. So we leave we engage with all these companies and we leave it to them to tell us where their wood came from. So with this, I know you are all the more eager to meet our panelists and start today's discussion. So I am going to introduce now the panelists, and I'm going to ask each of you to further introduce yourselves. But I just want everybody to know that Jennifer Alger is president of Far West Forest Products and director of the Urbanwood Network Western Region, and is working specifically on standards and certifications for Urbanwood. So we'll be hearing more about those things from her. And Paul Hickman is a designer and entrepreneur and the founder of Urban Ashes. Sarah Hines is the science delivery specialist with the U.S. Forest Service in the Baltimore area and has worked on the Urbanwood project there, which we will be hearing about. And Theo Hooker is a co-founder and COO of Cambium Carbon, which saves trees, tree wood, and supports planting more trees, especially in urban communities. So I'm going to leave it to each of them to further introduce themselves and their organization and their work. And Jennifer, let's start with you. I'm going to put this slide up for you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Susan. We are at the Urbanwood Network. We are absolutely excited and thrilled to align with your company and to be a member of your company. It is right in line with our value system. And so the Urbanwood Network, trees first, wood next. So the Urbanwood Network understands the value of our urban forests while they're living, while they're standing. We all know the wonderful value that our trees give us. And it's not just economic value, it's the full scope of health, environment, social, the whole picture. But we also understand that when those trees die, when they come to the end of their life due to disease, death, circumstance, that they're not a waste item. Even then, they need to be utilized and they need to be treated as the resource or the asset that they are. And so, next slide, please. And so, who is UWN? So, UWN is a collection of arborists, sawyers, manufacturers, municipalities or other landowners, and we all share a passion through that full chain. We share a passion for urban wood and for making sure that our urban wood is utilized to its highest and best use when it needs to come out. Our mission is to collaborate and connect those businesses and consumers to one another and to build confidence in the urban wood industry. And I can't see my slide, I'm gonna have to move that there. So, and one of the things that I wanna point out is so often when people hear the word urban wood, it is synonymous with live edge. Urban wood is no longer just about live edge. We've moved beyond that, and we are not just these small niche companies anymore. We're producing large amounts of good quality, sustainable quality and quantities, and so we're ready for the next slide. So, as Susan had stated, there is a lot of our urban wood that is the trees that people are not viewing as assets, and they're going into our waste stream. That second image there is actually a U.S. Forest Service Academy that we were all at, and that's a log deck in Baltimore. And so a lot of you who are listening right now and a lot of you who are on this panel were actually are actually in that picture. And so Sarah may talk a little bit more about that project later. But this urban wood could produce 7.2 billion board foot of lumber every year. And look at all the furnishings, the homes, and other wood products that could be built out of that. The urban wood industry is estimated to have the potential value of $753 million per year. That's in a white paper. We at the Urbanwood Network think we're gonna prove that that's even higher. So next slide, please. Urbanwood Network is, one of our goals is to drive markets for urban wood products. In addition to collaborating and connecting and networking our members for that full supply chain, it's to drive markets for urban wood, identify the potential demand, create new demand, and meet the demand with consistent supply. And I was very ill this week, had a fever, and so I apologize, I did not put my own slides together. So we do not, in this slide, someone generously offered to help, and I failed to let them know that we always thank our sponsors. And so I want to thank CAL FIRE through Prop 68 funding. They helped form what the Western region, which has now become a part of the Urbanwood Network, and the U.S. Forest Service has helped fund the Western region as well as Urbanwood Network as a whole. And so they have been wonderful assets, wonderful allies. Wood-Mizer and iDry are also sponsors. And I would be very remiss if I did not mention Sustainable Resources Institute, or SRI. And with funding from the U.S. Forest Service, they started the program of the Urbanwood Network that has since enveloped all of these different networks from around the region, including the Western region, which I'm the director of, and enveloped them into one cohesive network, the Urbanwood Network. And that alignment is what's helping take the Urbanwood Network from those niche businesses and really take it to the next level into those mid-sized manufacturing and be able to meet the demand that we're looking for. And I think I have one more slide. So this, urban wood defined. A lot of people are confused about what the definition of urban wood is. So urban wood is any wood that was not harvested for its timber value and was diverted or removed from the waste stream and developed or redeveloped into a product. Urban wood can come from three sources: deconstruction, which is typically called reclaimed, those fresh cut urban trees, and then salvaged trees. Salvaged like your retired orchard trees or other trees that would end up in that waste stream. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Susan. And thank you very much for letting me tell you a little bit about the Urbanwood Network.
Thank you so much for telling us, Jennifer. That's very useful to have that overview understanding. And now I'd like to turn to Sarah for you to tell us some about yourself and about what the U.S. Forest Service is doing in working in urban wood.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Susan. Thanks so much, everyone. And thanks for your attendance. It's great to be here. So my name is Sarah Hines. I work for the U.S. Forest Service. And I think a lot of people kind of wonder, hey, U.S. Forest Service, you guys steward the national forests. And of course we do, but we have a research and development branch and a state and private forestry branch. And, part of our mission is to help steward all of the nation's forests. And really what that means to me, and I think to a lot of us these days, is valuing all of our forests at every stage of life. And so if you think about it, I think the opportunity is kind of almost obvious. A lot of people are like, why aren't we doing this? Trees fall down in the city all the time because, like Jennifer said, disease, insects, storms, whatever, they're not harvested for their wood, but then they get chipped up and sent to the landfill, right? And so that's just a waste, especially if you consider not all trees are suitable for wood products, but I would say in urban areas, you've got 10 to 20% of trees that might be higher end, but you have to think about them differently. The entire supply chain needs to think about the problem differently. And rather than an arborist going in there and maximizing efficiency by cutting up into little cookies and chipping it, you got to take a little bit of extra time to cut it into longer lengths. But an arborist isn't going to do that unless there's a supply chain ready to accept it and you can create value all along the way. Now we're talking with you all who represent kind of the manufacturing furniture community, and it might be intriguing to think about urban wood, but maybe you haven't yet because the reliable supply chain just isn't there. If you Google urban wood in any particular city, you're going to find some really cool mom and pop craftspeople making amazing products, right? But is the supply available for you to sort large scale, consistent quantity without going and doing a lot of the little footwork? Well, it's developing, and we're really grateful for Room and Board for seeing the potential early on. We've been working on this issue quite substantially in Baltimore for a number of years under the heading of Baltimore Wood Project, and now Urban Wood Project. It's really expanded beyond Baltimore, and as Jennifer said, we're part of this national urban wood network, and we're really all trying to row in the same direction to grow the supply and demand and make that platform where they can connect, right? But Room and Board came out to Baltimore, saw the supply chain that we were beginning to create, and was robust enough for them to launch a furniture line, durable enough for them to call it Urban Wood Project Baltimore, and then expand that to other cities as urban wood opportunities have taken off. But I mean, really what I want to just convey at the opening remarks is our goal is to really create this national urban wood economy, and we would like all of your engagement in thinking about how this is possible. And I'm going to pass it next. I pass it to Susan, and I think she's going to introduce Theo, who's playing a critical role in sort of that brokerage of supply and demand and platform building, as is Jennifer in the Urban Wood Network. Thank you.
Yes, great. Thank you, Sarah. And I too will thank Room and Board, exemplary retailer member of our organization and founder of our organization, for their great leadership on this front. So now I want to introduce Theo. Theo, please tell us about yourself and about Cambium Carbon.
Yeah, Susan, thanks so much for having me and Cambium in the room, and it's been great to get to know you all through the Sustainable Furnishings Council, and happy to be here today. But I appreciate you taking a step back at the beginning here and really outlining, why we're all here, why we're working in this space to address some of the very real challenges and threats around climate change and to our communities, to our landscapes, and really that's where Cambium started from and came from, working on this 2100 time scale. We are seeing massive fires and heat waves across the Western US. What's that going to look like in 20 years, in 40 years? And so much of what can be done today, at least where we're excited about, is here in this room. How can we use this wasted material, avoid it from going to landfill, turn it into this valuable asset for communities, for businesses, and then help plant new trees with that. So that's the overview of Cambium Carbon. We help turn this wasted material into its best use and then channel those revenues into new tree planting projects and targeting places, in urban areas where the value of a tree is so much higher because of urban cooling and shade and energy reduction and health benefits and air quality, but also because then, in those communities, it brings people together, it creates jobs, and as Sarah was saying, really stimulates that urban wood economy, throughout the tree's life cycle. So as we've laid out, if you look anywhere in the country, there are small pockets being used of urban wood, and that's growing, which is fantastic. And there's so much work that has been done by the Urbanwood Network, by the US Forest Service as well. And we're really excited to see that grow. And as Jennifer mentioned, kind of get to the next level of use. So that's where Cambium's putting a lot of our effort, is to connect these local mills and sawyers to broader, bigger orders for material. So anything that you can make from hardwood, we can work to source that for you. We're working with architects, designers, furniture manufacturers to understand their product specifications, understand their ideal end use, and work to connect them with these local supply chains. And within that, allow these sawyers and mills to focus on their work, what they love doing, working with this material, and communicate the story of this product. So from fallen tree through the added carbon benefits and the projected carbon benefits of avoiding those emissions from landfill, the substitution in place of maybe traditional supply chains, and then of course the added benefits of those local tree plantings as well, and make that story really accessible not only for the company and the people using that wood, but to the end customer as well. I'm sure I speak for all the panelists here that people love this story, people love the idea, but lots of people, it's as much an education and advocacy, industry and space as well, that people need to, learn about what happens to these trees in their backyard, and how they can play an active role in this surprising and large scale impact, climate solution. But yeah. That's Cambium Carbon. Excited to dig into the conversation with everyone and answer some questions. But thanks again, Susan, for having us.
Thank you, Theo, for that excellent work you're doing and for being here for today's conversation. And Paul, I want to turn to you now for you to tell us about Urban Ashes and all that you are doing with that organization that that's been yours for a long time. Tell us all about it, Paul. And Paul, we are not hearing you.
Sorry. I got the windows open here and it's a little bit windy, so I'm muted. My apologies. Okay. Thank you, Susan, and thank you everybody for being here. I'm excited to get that, to really see this finally hitting on a national major level in the furnishings industry. I'm a long-standing furniture designer and wood butcher. I've been doing furniture since about 1990. But Urban Ashes is a design and consulting firm built on decades of experience within the urban wood industry, as well as the green building and furniture industries, including 10 years in manufacturing. We currently, what we shifted about 2 years ago is to focus specifically on helping other companies and municipalities maximize their capacity of their fallen urban trees, while empowering one of the other things we do is empowering our most discriminated against labor forces, our formerly incarcerated and our youth that have had contact with the juvenile justice system. So when we started Urban Ashes about 12 or 13 years ago, even though I had been working in urban wood for 15 years or 10 to 15 years at that point, there was pretty minimal infrastructure out there to build the upstream and the downstream. When you're a manufacturer, you kind of sit right in the middle of that process. And so we had to build all that, or majority of that, fill all the holes and things like that that didn't exist. And thankfully, over the last 10 or 12 years, things have changed quite a bit. And one of those giant changes is the Urbanwood Network. In 2005, we started a small group here in Southeast Michigan called the Urbanwood Project that ultimately evolved into the Urbanwood Network. And as Sarah said, we are no longer niche producers of funky lumber and just gorgeous slabs. It's arrived as a national force in helping build a more sustainable and stable wood supply chain for all of our furniture and wood needs. We're a passionate and dedicated network of businesses, organizations, and individuals that have built the critical infrastructure now, not just Urban Ashes, but other entities out there. Best practices, supply chains needed to bring urban wood utilization into mainstream manufacturing through decades of experience, education, and commitment. And I feel we're driven to provide the most beautiful, sustainable materials available. And it's something that's been overlooked. It's literally in our front yards, and we're bringing it to. We've now brought it to large scale or mid scale and large scale manufacturing. Is proven with room and board. Taylor Guitars is another example that is using it on a very high level, and we're excited to present it to the members of the Sustainable Furnishings Council and make sure that you have the knowledge and capacity to tap into this incredible resource to help further your environmental goals, your social goals, your economic goals, all of those things. So that's really what we're all here for. We've built this incredible network that is basically at your disposal now, whether that's as members or just accessing our brain trust, so to speak. Yeah. And I'm excited now kind of cut to the chase here and get to questions, because that's really what we're here for. But Urban Ashes is basically a design and consulting firm helping others maximize their urban salvage wood.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. And Paul, we've had some little snafus here, so please find the button to turn your camera back on. I think it happened on this end, so there we go. We have you back. Right. Now, so start this conversation about how all of y'all can get your materials to our industry and what difference it will make. And Jennifer, I'd like to start with you and invite you to talk about standards and what certifications there might be in existence or in development, because that is a question I get frequently. As you said, people think of a live edge dining table. That's nice, but right. There is much more than that. So talk to us about standards development and such.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you. Well, I grew up in the traditional wood industry, and my family also worked with urban wood. We just didn't know it was called urban wood yet because the term wasn't regularly used. And in the late 90s, I took over the marketing for my company, Far West Forest Products, here in California, and started to realize that most of what we do is urban, salvaged, or reclaimed. The logs that are coming in, and then the wood that we're producing and selling is coming from those three arenas. They're retired orchard trees, they're city trees that no one else would take, that everyone else kept saying this can't be done, and we took it and we milled it and we processed it. And then I started, as I'm working on the marketing, I just really started to study the carbon benefits from utilizing this wood, and that this wood, instead of that carbon being emitted back into the atmosphere, if we are converting this into lumber, we can store that carbon in this wood. And as I'm studying that, I'm thinking, I must share this. I must share this concept with other small wood producers, and we need to build an industry around this thing called Urbanwood. And so I set out on a mission, and a group of us networked for decades on, just building this thing called Urbanwood, and producing and just trying to figure it out, and overcome the obstacles and move beyond that niche production company. And as we're producing this, and we're feeling pretty good about where we're at and trying to move our wood products into these mid-sized retail locations, into mid-sized manufacturing firms, we would hear back from these manufacturers, from these architects, from these designers, and from these vendors that we love this. Conceptually, we get it. We know that Urbanwood is the most sustainable material for material selection of any material. But, and so there was always that but,
Yeah.
And the but was, boy, what about the chain of custody? How do we know this is really Urbanwood? What can you tell me about the backstory of this wood? And now, as Theo had mentioned, we were telling the backstory all along, but we're telling it on piece by piece by piece. We weren't following some companies were following a chain of custody, but we had no certification program in place to verify that, to validate that essentially. And we had no standardized grading system for Urbanwood. And nature's inventory in the urban environment is different. If you look at it, the growth rings may be different, the character of the wood may be different. And so we really had to rethink our grading structure. And we're definitely not opposed to the NHLA. It's a great grading system. And some of our members are able to use that, and it works well for them. But some are not. And so the Urbanwood Network has developed a grading system for urban wood that is very specific to urban wood. It allows consumers to know what they're getting, whether they're in Baltimore, California, or North Dakota. They know what wood they're going to get, and whether it's going to meet the specifications for their project. And within that, so we have the chain of custody, we have the standardized grading system, moisture content labeling verification, so that you can't label it as kiln dried unless it's been kiln dried. So there's some verification and some standardization and certification within that, as well as points values. I loved your points values that you were going through, Susan. That aligns very much with what we've created. So we created the standards and these certifications as an answer to get our product into this, into these larger arenas. And the standards and certification have a numbering system. As the wood travels, it decreases the value, or the carbon value, or the points value get fewer as it goes over, say, 500 miles or beyond, because it has a larger carbon footprint. It's still urban wood. We'll still ship it wherever, but you're able to have full transparency that way and see exactly what the actual carbon footprint is of that piece of wood. And so it's just a lot of transparency that we're really excited about. And we're excited to say that we believe the standards are going to be formally adopted. They're being utilized by most of the leaders in this industry. They're really being followed and utilized now, but formally adopted and begin to certify organizations. And begin to certify the wood products themselves as they flow through this chain of custody. And so we believe that that's going to give you as designers, as manufacturers, as those consumers of wood, it's going to be able to give you a better pool of material to pull from. And we're building the supply chains. I know Cambium Carbon is working on it. We're working on it out here. My organization is getting ready to start the first West Coast brick and mortar location that's an aggregated inventory of urban wood from producers in this area. As Theo mentioned, it allows these small sawyers to do what they do best and mill wood. Then we'll verify the grade. We'll make sure it matches the grading system. We'll verify that the chain of custody and the certifications were there so that we know exactly what had happened to it and or where it's been. And then we'll be able to distribute it through this facility. And that'll be a sort of a pilot location that'll be able to be transferred to other cities. Like I said, we'll ship the wood anywhere, but boy, we love it to be local. You know, that's so important to us to try to do that. We're also working with a inventory management, a software development company that is developing a inventory management system to be able to manage for all of these small producers, so they'll know exactly what they have. The chain of custody will all be listed there. The backstory will all be listed there. We'll be able to tell the consumer that, as well as each handoff in that supply chain, from the landowner, tree owner, to the to the arborist, to the sawyer, to the secondary wood processor, to the manufacturer, and all the way up the supply chain. And so we're working with that team of developers, and then that's also going to have that e-commerce solution to be able to distribute that. So I know one of those issues, one of those feedbacks that we were getting when we were trying to get our wood into these little niche markets, or not get beyond the niche markets and into these mid locations, was how do we know if we specify this wood, or how do we know if we order this that we're going to be able to get it? These small mom and pop size producers may not be able to do that, but with consultants and these liaisons through the Urbanwood Network, through what my company is doing on the West, through what Paul Hickman's doing with his consulting, and being able to bring all of those people together with what Cambium Carbon is working on, we're going to be able to create, for the first time ever, a steady supply chain of urban wood that will be produced.
So exciting. That's why we have you here to tell us about it. Thank you. And Theo, I'm going to time is flying. I can't believe how fast. But Theo, I do want to turn to you because of your background in math and economics and your work with cities. And so I want you to talk to us just a little bit about that kind of value of using urban woods, and even mentioning, if you can, the carbon credits that sometimes come into play in cities. Can you speak to some of that?
Yeah, there's certainly more knowledgeable and experienced folks who can speak to this, but at least in our niche, we've been working on is really focusing on the projected carbon benefits that within these local systems. There's so much value, as we kind of talked about before, that from the avoided emissions of the tree coming down to the displaced emissions of traditional building materials, and then of course the benefits of actually planting these trees in high impact areas. And you mentioned those different pieces at the beginning, Susan, but that impacts the heating, the energy savings, but also in social equity in the communities as well that are traditionally left out of those communities as well. So we'll really frame this as the carbon benefits side of things. At some, we would love the urban forestry space to have these formal methodologies for carbon credit. We're not quite there yet, but as this grows, specifically on the urban wood side of things, I think the planting and that's a natural next step, and we're excited to help move the industry in the next direction. But I'm sure Sarah and other folks have some more insight on that side of things as well.
Okay, thank you. Now, Paul, I know that you have done a lot of work in life cycle assessment on urban wood, and so you might be able to augment what Theo has just talked about and some of what Jennifer said. Do you want to say something about life cycle assessments of urban wood, salvaged wood? And you have to unmute yourself.
I did it again.
There you go.
Thank you. it's definitely the sort of the other piece of what Theo was, though he referenced it in there too, but it is the other critical piece that goes in with replanting, that we make sure that we utilize the trees that do come down for whatever reason other than their wood value to their maximum capacity. So we've been at Urban Ashes, we've been doing life cycle assessments with some cities, and specifically one that on the baseline assessment, we definitely discovered that carbon emissions coming from the decomposition of trees were removed in just 1 year outpaces their gained carbon sequestration from the total, what their planting plan is, and it's a pretty aggressive planting plan. And so the way to go past or to make up that difference is in the utilization. And we are able to, through the LCAs, we're able to generate the critical data that backs up the decisions and utilization of that wood to show where it really has a good impact in the, making that carbon gap, filling that carbon gap. As most of you know, life cycle assessments provide the groundwork for any sustainable or CSR strategy within a company. And this gives you the actual data to be able to make those decisions and make fair comparisons between urban salvage wood and other wood sources. So working with the cities or other landowners that have large tracts of trees that are coming down, or that elements of trees are coming down for any reason, again, other than their wood value, it's always a big thing. We want to make sure that that's clear to everybody.
Yeah.
In providing that data analysis and capturing that data is critical, and it gives, like I said, that raw data for transparent and for credible environmental labeling as part of any environmental product declaration or EPDs, which I'm guessing a lot of the folks on this call get involved with. So it gives you the critical data to back up the claims and for you to be able to apply that to your products or your decisions and potentially utilizing urban wood in your products.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Sarah, I want to turn to you before we turn to the questions that have come in from the audience. Sarah, I of course have familiarity with the Baltimore Wood Project, and was delighted to go and have a look just before our COVID era arrived. And what I'd love for you to do, you had been so practical in the way you have addressed the industry that you want to serve, and in so many ways. It's been very practical and useful for companies like Room and Board and other companies. But I wonder whether there is any particular material that is particularly hard for you to move out of urban areas, and it ends up maybe going to the landfill after all, or is there anything that is the best seller and it's hard for you to keep up with supply? I know with the Urbanwood Network you can refer to suppliers in other cities, but talk about that a little bit if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Susan. I'll try to keep it brief because I know we want to get to questions. That's a good question. And I think that my colleagues, and I mean, this is a broad partnership, so the folks who are literally more boots on the ground and moving the wood products would probably have a better sense of like the species per se. But what I will say is to jumpstart this entire urban wood economy, it really takes, you really need to take a holistic approach, right? I mean, because like I said earlier, you got 10 to 20% of the trees that are suitable for high-end applications, like maybe furniture. What do you do with the other 80%? And so we really need receptacles like sort yards or something like that, that are championed by a city, or it could be a vertical integration of an arborist company, but they're going to take everything, right? So that other people who are taking down trees, they can bring everything there and just dump it. And then that sort yard will create piles of value and separate the high-end stuff from the 80% of the low-end stuff. And we need to innovate there too, right? We need to think about that differently. Obviously mulch and firewood, but biochar has the potential to filter water. There's lots of different applications there, combined heat and energy, stuff like that that we can do and that we are doing oftentimes with municipalities and offices of sustainability, as well as, you know, pretty progressive arborists like West Coast arborists, to make the entire system work for everyone. Obviously, we want to make all the high value stuff available to manufacturers and furniture companies and anyone who's interested, architecture firms. And then what do we do with the rest? And so we're working on that too.
Great. So one of our questions here is about the rest. How do you address potential contamination? For instance, industrial woods that might have toxic chemicals added to them. So Sarah, that might be part of what you're talking about now, but I'll let any of you answer that. Paul has an answer.
Yeah, I can address that specifically.
Go ahead.
As a manufacturer, we also had the huge advantage of we manufacture here in Southeast Michigan, and the Ecology Center in Ann Arbor is one of the leading testers in the world on toxic chemicals in products. And so we were always able to, we would periodically, when we get new stock, we would have it run through their system to determine toxicity levels. And so that was something that's always critical to our manufacturing and our processing. So I encourage, in the deconstructed world, that is a challenge. Whether it's the most common one is lead paint, but you'll also see a lot of things like arsenic and other things that are in the wood. And so having that tested is critical and beneficial, and that's things that we recommend, or at least our company focuses on. And it's a challenge for sure in the deconstructed world.
And that's one of the things the standards mention as well, is documenting that information, and so that the end user and the purchaser can determine that, as well as sterilization. If it was, for insects and pests, what temperature did it reach? And so there are various things that are addressed in the standards, which will help each of you have full transparency on what you're purchasing.
That's very good. Thank you. The next question here is whether any of the Urbanwood Network or others are preparing to address the wave of woody materials that'll come from the temporary outdoor dining structures that have been erected all over New York City and in many other cities. So in this short COVID era that we've had, which does seem long, but anyway, in this short time, an awful lot of lumber has been used, a lot, and we are, of course, in a time of shortage for this lumber. So any of that going to be salvaged? Anything in the works for addressing that from any of you?
Just speak to the pulses in the system overall, because I think that's, a generalizable point, right? We've got this pulse maybe from COVID takedown, but we've also got pulses from extreme events. You think about storms that sweep through, and there's a lot of beautiful trees that will fall down that are, exceed your 20% threshold for usable wood. Insects and disease, emerald ash borer, et cetera. So I think it's a matter of, what we're trying to do, and I think what Jennifer and others are doing in this Urbanwood Network, is just activating all of these different little epicenters of capability and people who are ready to respond. And part of it is getting the municipality involved if they have interest in capacity, or finding that private sector or nonprofit partner who's willing to kind of do the sort yard. And then from a Forest Service perspective, we're actually thinking about, we have these urban strike teams that go in, and we've had deployed smoke jumpers in New York City after storms. And so we are starting to think about how can we position ourselves to help in that capacity when they have these pulses. So
yeah, that's great to know. Thank you for being there. Good use of our tax dollars. I appreciate it. Thank you. Now, there are a couple of questions here specifically about certification. Is the certification available to read So can we review it? Is it up and running? Is anyone using it? I'm going to give you all the questions we've gotten about it. Since Forest Stewardship Council is in the process of revising their 40-007 standard for reclaimed wood, is some of the standards relating to that. Those, I think,
Great questions.
those are the questions that I'm seeing that relate to certification.
So when we wrote the standards, we had an expert in both FSC, SFI, PEFC, and LEED help us add an appendix to our standards. And that appendix goes back to each of those very well-respected existing certification programs, and align with those. And so we show how our standards align with FSC, with SFI, and with each of these. Additionally, SFI is also moving into the urban forest management role, and so they're creating standards for that currently, and I'm actually on their task force assisting with that in the role of urban wood and how does this affect when the trees are removed. And FSC, as of yesterday, they had their open consulting open for that, and so we wrote this knowing that FSC hadn't entered that world yet, so we had to do something on our own. And so just as we're aligned with SFI, we are hoping to align and work closely with FSC so that the best end use for all of our urban wood happens and that more trees are rescued.
Great, great.
And there were other questions. I don't recall what they were.
There are lots more. I mean, well, there are a few more questions here, but I had combined the ones about certification. I will ask you this. Could you make sure we get the link to where we can read the standard?
Yes, yeah. So they have not been fully adopted, although they are being utilized by many of the members. They have not been fully adopted. They will be next month, but I will reach out to the board and verify that we can share sooner. And get a link out, especially if we have the list of everyone who was in attendance. We're happy to share and get input. This is something that is for you, you will benefit from, so we definitely welcome input.
Great, great, thank you. Now, another question here is how do panelist companies balance their goals for growth and steady supply chains with the need for urban locations to invest in the preservation and extension of the life of much needed trees, which all of you are working on making happen. But maybe Theo, do you want, or any of you, who wants to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I can kick us off. Anyone else can jump in. But I think if I'm understanding the question, really how to manage, there's this constant flow of material, and part of that requires infrastructure investment and the capability and the connections to make that happen. So how do we balance that with actually meeting, demand as it comes in? And I think the short answer there is that there is a lot of material that is built up in the system. So you can think of that as the stock of material already available or in some form or another. Then flows through the system that come through, I was mentioning pulse events, storms, things like that. So how do you balance those two material or those volumes? Right now, we're really excited to move this material that exists in the system. And that's, that partly there's two reasons. First is to generate value and prove the model that people can use this material, they can use it now, and it is available. And as with the standards, with these certifications, it's high quality material itself. And then starting to develop the infrastructure pathways to grow and address more of that supply chain that comes in. Good. Yeah, jump in.
Good. They're related to that question. There are a couple of questions from people saying, how do I get urban wood from my urban area? So one person asking from Staten Island, And so does the Urbanwood Network, I know that, and I know that Cambium Carbon has certain cities you're working in. I think I've seen that on your website, but does the Urbanwood Net, and similarly, the Wood Network has states listed, I think. What do y'all recommend for how somebody finds their local material?
Yeah, right now we have a map that can be searched regionally.
Okay.
The map doesn't show, hey, I'm looking for white oak and I need it, you know, to be an X grade. You know, it doesn't do anything like that. But it shows the Urbanwood Network members in each state in an interactive map. We're working on combining the Urbanwood Network West and the Urbanwood Network the main Urbanwood Network websites into one. So over the next 45 to 60 days, you're going to see a brand new website. It's going to make it a lot easier. Right now, it is two organizations merging into one. And then also the software company that I was talking to you about that we're working on, that will be a searchable by region. It will be searchable by zip code. It will be searchable by species, by grade, by type of wood, by reason the tree was removed, and by chain of custody score.
Great.
I was just going to jump in real quick on that. On the immediate aspect of that, no matter where you are in the country, I'm going to speak for the other two. I'm going to leave Sarah out of this mix. The other two, with Theo and Jennifer, reach out to any of the three of us. And if we can't directly connect you, we'll find you, we'll reach out and find who, you can connect to in your area. You can also reach out directly just to the main email for the Urbanwood Network, which I believe is info@Urbanwood Network. And if it's not on the website, we'll find them and connect you. So at this point, the best thing to do is just reach out to us and we'll do the legwork to help you, to find it.
Great. We can even include Sarah in that. She knows lots of people too.
She knows lots of people. She does.
I was trying to spare her.
It has been really great to talk to all of you this hour. Thank you very, very much. We have reached the end of the hour, but I really appreciate your time and attention, and we've got thank yous coming in from our audience too. So thank you very much for all you've shared with us in this hour, and we're going to look forward to continuing the conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Wonderful talk.